Welcome to our chat today. We're diving into a debate around anti China rhetoric and the perspectives introduced by Kishore Mahbubani.
Sounds exciting. I'm really curious about how he dismantles that narrative.
Right, so Kishore Mahbubani, a former diplomat and scholar, really lays it out. Our common Western misunderstandings about China's rise are built on selective facts and some deep rooted misconceptions.
Yes. And what exactly does he say about the prevailing rhetoric? Like, is he saying it's deliberate or more about misinterpretations?
It's more like an unintentional byproduct of biased perspectives. He argues that the anti-China narrative is often less about objective analysis and more about, misunderstanding the nuances of China's policies and intentions.
Right, I get that. So, is he suggesting that these biases come from selective facts?
Exactly. It's like he's saying that people focus only on certain events, sometimes ignoring historical and geopolitical contexts that really shape China's actions.
Yep, that makes sense. Interesting. Now, how does he link this selective viewpoint to, say, modern international relations?
Well, you see, he challenges the notion that China's rise is inherently aggressive or a threat. Instead, he lays out that these views miss the complexities of international power dynamics. It's like imagining a chess game where only one piece
I
is
see your
seen as
point.
dangerous.
But some might argue that there's indeed a strategic element in China's actions. How does he handle that counterpoint?
That's a good question. He respectfully challenges that by pointing out that many of the strategic moves attributed solely to China are actually part of broader global processes. He says that the narrative, as it stands, often oversimplifies issues like trade, human rights, and regional security. And
Right, that makes it sound like he's calling for nuance. Absolutely. It's like he wants us to look deeper than the surface level headlines.
exactly. And he underscores the idea that if we take a step back, the supposed threat is often more about, well, a misunderstanding of different cultural, political, and historical experiences.
Very intriguing. So, in essence, he's urging a more comprehensive view of China's rise rather than painting it with a single negative brush.
Yes, precisely. And he mentions that this nuanced approach is not only more factually sound, but also crucial for maintaining balanced international relationships.
Right, balanced is definitely the key word here. I wonder, though, does he offer any specific examples or historical comparisons to back up his point?
Absolutely. He draws on a variety of examples, like comparing how Western narratives have sometimes misinterpreted historical events. It's like saying you wouldn't judge a book by a single chapter.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I like that. And does he go into how such a misinterpretation affects modern policy?
Yes, he argues that these misunderstandings can lead to what he calls polarized policies, policies that might escalate tensions rather than de escalate them. It's like if you build your strategy solely on fear, you might end up missing collaborative
Right,
opportunities.
exactly. That seems crucial in today's global scenario. So, his point essentially encourages us to reevaluate how we approach global power shifts.
Precisely. And he particularly notes that the narrative of an anti China backlash is not wholly justified when looked at with a broader, more analytical perspective.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. I've noticed how discussions like this also reflect on, the media's role in framing such issues. Did he touch on that aspect?
Indeed, he did. He critiques how media often plays into and amplifies these misunderstandings by selectively highlighting evidence that supports an anti China agenda. It's like watering down the reality with a tint of bias.
That's true. That's a sharp observation. Sort of like if the lens is skewed, the picture you get is distorted.
Yes, exactly. And he also points out that sometimes Western leaders use these narratives, perhaps out of political expediency, to justify their own policy decisions or strategic posturing.
Right, political expediency, definitely. That's quite compelling. But don't you think some critics might argue that he's underestimating some legitimate concerns?
Ah, good point. Sure, some legitimate concerns about issues like human rights do exist. However, his argument is more about the exaggeration of these issues into a broad anti China stance rather than ignoring them. He calls for a balanced dialogue where those concerns are addressed without letting them morph into a blanket
Yep, I
suspicion.
agree with that approach. So it's not about sweeping issues under the rug, it's about rather contextualizing them properly.
Exactly. Contextualization is key. And it's like if we view all global issues under a single lens, we risk losing the rich complexities that actually define international politics.
Absolutely. I'm curious, does he offer any practical steps or suggestions on how to foster this more nuanced understanding?
He does, somewhat. He emphasizes better education, more open dialogue among nations, and promoting platforms where diverse perspectives can be shared. It's like recommending a multifaceted discussion table rather than a one sided debate.
Right, that's a solid idea. And he probably stresses the importance of not letting fear based narratives dominate policy, right?
Definitely. He critiques the tendency to let alarmism drive decisions, which in turn can lead to policies that might further isolate rather than integrate. It is like a vicious cycle of mistrust.
Exactly. That brings a whole new meaning to international diplomacy. I mean, if leaders start questioning the prevailing narratives, the outcomes could be very different.
Yes, and that's where his expertise as a former diplomat shines through. He really understands the importance of dialogue and strategic patience, kind of like a chess master pacing out each move carefully.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. However, I do want to challenge one point here. Don't you think that sometimes a more critical stance toward China might actually help hold it accountable?
That's a fair challenge. I think his stance isn't to ignore accountability. Rather, it's to caution against an overly simplistic critical approach that ignores the broader picture. He believes that responsible accountability should come from understanding, not from fear or selective interpretation.
I see what you're saying. So it's more about informed criticism than blanket condemnation.
Exactly. And by promoting a more balanced understanding, he makes the case that policies could be more constructive, like addressing issues head on rather than through
Right, that's a
reactionary
very
measures.
constructive outlook. And considering today's volatile global environment, that balance seems not just idealistic but necessary.
Absolutely. It's like he's saying we need to move away from a zero sum mindset. Instead, embrace a strategic approach that accounts for complexities and mutual interests in global affairs.
Mutual interests definitely matter. I find it quite refreshing that he calls for dialogue over division. It makes you wonder if we could see more of this approach in public debates.
True, true. And it's kind of like, if you think about it, dialogue is always more effective than the constant posturing. It reminds me of when two chess players analyze moves together instead of fighting over them.
Right, that's a solid point indeed. Given his background and experience, it's no wonder he has such a measured tone, a real antidote to extreme narratives.
Yes, it's his experience that really brings depth to the conversation. He's been in the diplomatic arena, so he knows what happens when rhetoric overshadows reality.
Yep, exactly. And I guess this discussion also offers a reminder that global debates should be guided by facts and context rather than knee jerk reactions.
Absolutely. And it's like a call to educate ourselves better, to question the narratives we are fed, and to always strive for a more comprehensive understanding.
Well said. It's a fascinating mix of diplomacy, history, and modern geopolitics. Really something to think about as the world continues to change.
Exactly. And as we close out this segment, remember, it's like he encourages us to keep questioning the status quo with an open, curious mind, one that strives for nuanced debate rather than polarized rhetoric.
Right, that's the takeaway for sure. Thanks for such a rich discussion. It really challenges us to think deeper about the narratives that shape our global landscape.
Sure thing, it's been a great talk. Let's keep on exploring these big ideas.